we're all here, we'll call the meeting to order. It's, I guess you have the time, but it's 9:32.
We are live.
Thank you. The first matter on the agenda is to approve the minutes from March 24, 2021. I believe you all have them in your package. Just for the record, since none of us were in attendance at that meeting, could Sean or Pam or some other person advise how these minutes were prepared and by whom?
Yes, the committee met in March. The HR committee has not met since that period of time, so that we were unable to approve minutes prior to that. Both Pam and I attended that meeting. Pam took her normal copious notes of the actions that occurred and what was said, and that's what you see in terms of the work product placed before you.
Can you review the minutes, Mr. Coleman?
I'm sorry, Ms. Wong, we couldn't hear you.
Sean, did you have an opportunity to review the minutes as well? Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I can hear you.
Sean, do you have an opportunity to review the minutes? Maybe Sean doesn't have-
Ms. Wong, you seem to be fading in and out. I wasn't sure who you were directing your question to.
I'm sorry, Sean. I'll speak a little louder. Did you have an opportunity to also review the minutes?
Yes, I did. I believe those minutes accurately reflect the actions that were taken by the HR committee at its meeting on March 24th of 2021.
Thank you. With that, can I have a motion to approve the minutes of the Human Resources Committee meeting of March 24, 2021?
Ms. Bobby Neal, so moved.
Yeah.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes from March 24, 21, please say aye.
Aye.
Any abstention? No. And with that, the minutes are approved. From the minutes of March 24, 2021 are approved. Next on the agenda, we've asked Jewel White, who is the Director of Human Resources, just to provide a briefing on the MES Human Resources system. So with that, I'll turn it over to Jewel.
Good morning again, everyone. I just want to tell you a little bit about myself. I've been here over 20 years, started in 85 to 2000, then came back, actually was recruited back in 2015. So just wanted you to know that this is a little bit of a deja vu for me because I remember when we went independent the first time. So like I said, according to the slide, 1993, the General Assembly approved the legislation restructuring MES as a self-supporting agency separate from the Department of Natural Resources, and also gave us that authority to set up an independent personnel system. All our regulations are found in COMAR. And in 1995, we implemented our independent personnel system, which in COMAR is called the Human Resources System. All our employees at that time were required to sign a written employment agreement, what was new for a lot of former state employees. And there are 27 sections of COMAR, which covers every single area of human resources, from compensation to benefits to leave, employee development, fully comprehensive system. I have a list here of all the actual sections. And we have been, like I said, since we started the system, basically all of these items are in place now. We periodically, you'll see position evaluation. Yes, we do that periodically. We have a process for how we bring on employees as far as hiring them. So I guess in a nutshell, human resources probably covers every part of the whole employment experience from before a person is hired till really after they retire. Actually, because we still have are in touch with our retirees, particularly through our retiree medical system. And we, of course, allow transfers to our HR system for state employees, and they can bring their time and their leave. So it is all captured, even though they're now part of an independent human resources system. They can transfer all their time. This slide, while there are very much a lot of similarities to our system and the state personnel system, there are some differences. For example, our leave accrual, sick leave, MES employees accrue 7 days, state 15 days. Our personal leave, MES is 4 days, and the state has 6 days. And the holiday, and I guess beginning with Juneteenth, now it's MES has 10 holidays moving forward, and the state will have 12, and they also during election year will have 13. Other benefits, one of the reasons when people ask us about why our sick leave is a little less is because we offer short and long-term disability, as well as free life insurance at no charge to the employee, one time your annual salary. We also have AFLEC, we have our leave buyback and sick leave incentive program. We have a comprehensive education tuition assistance program that is very much supported by Dr. Glass. We even now have a person who's going for their PhD. We're very excited about that. And we have somebody who will also soon be pursuing theirs as well. We have a performance-based compensation system. I think that was also mentioned in the minutes. We just finished going through that process with having our employees sit down with their supervisors, going through we actually have a performance appraisal tool, going through goals, going through how they performed in the previous appraisal year. Of course, for retirement, we have a 401k, and of course the state has the state retirement and pension system. We also have our retiree medical reimbursement program for those age 60 with 15 years of service, that they can be reimbursed anywhere from $4,000 to $5,500 for their expenses. And as you also are aware, we have our Best and Best Plus and Executive Incentive. Mentioned, of course, I think Jeff Tosi went over the Reform Act in the previous board meeting, but this is the language from the bill. Actually requires our board to establish a personnel system with certain provisions of law, including certain procedures for the redress of certain discipline or discharge. And there's a couple of things that they brought out that I also wanted to bring out in this slide. One of the parts includes fair and equitable procedures for the redress of grievances and for the hiring, promotion, and I don't know why my screen cuts off that, discipline or doctrine for just cause, and laying off of employees. We currently have a process for those actions. Our termination clauses are also in accordance with the terms of the employment agreement. They are laid out in the contracts, actually, that each employee signs. As well as we also have a discipline policy, and we also have an employee handbook that we hand out to every new hire. Second bullet, for each position in the service that is not assigned to a project, we shall reasonably advertise, conduct a search, and conduct a competitive interview process. We currently do that for the majority of our positions. We do advertise, have a diverse interview panel, does the interviewing, official scoring, recommendation for hire, and then the whole hiring process. We are part of the Workday platform. Our Workday is a little different than the states, if you are know about the state process, but we have a full comprehensive way of bringing employees on board. The one good thing about this provision is that, like in 2019, when we brought on a large group of employees from Garrett County, we did not have to go through that process. And if that happens again, it probably will, we're constantly growing, that we'll be able to bring on a group without necessarily going through each step that we normally do to keep operations flowing, as we did in with the Garrett County operations when we took over those operations, assumed those operations. And of course, employees of the service may enter into binding collective bargaining agreements.
Ms. White, I just want to add a little color to the bullet on each open position in the service that is not assigned to a project. We will continue to meet the spirit of early iterations of the law, where we will not invoke the Garrett County provision unless it is an emergency or a part of a larger agreement, where we won't be just allowing it to happen willy-nilly inside the organization just because it's a billable project. We will be doing searches and having our full panel interview process when it's not going to interfere with the business for the client. Just to make that clear. But it was something, as described, the Garrett County example, Mr. Witt, was the example that was understood by the General Assembly as we were going through the process of the Reform Act. Thank you, Ms. White. Sorry for the interruption.
That's okay. And that is in a nutshell my presentation. Any questions?
Thank you.
No?
Go through various policies, but at this point, your briefing was very helpful and we appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next matters on the agenda include our consideration of the MES Reform Act's requirements that certain policies be adopted or readopted by December 31 of this year. Moreover, there are some portions in the Reform Act which also require that the board approve some of these policies by December 1 of this year. So I thought it would be really helpful to have both Dr. Glass and Sean provide some overview for the committee. And as the committee reviews their presentations, some of these policies may not necessarily fall in the human resources arena. So some consideration will need to be made, probably in conjunction with Dr. Glass and Judge Smalkin, with regard to who should be actually reviewing some, if not all, or part of these policies. So with that said, I'll turn it over to Dr. Glass.
Thank you. So as things were going last fall, prior to even receiving the pre-file of the bill, I really wanted to understand all the policies and where they were and where not just to know where the policies were, but to also build a system of accountability of making sure that the policies are enforced. And so I assigned 2 executive leaders at the time to this project. And that was for all. So just to be clear, that was for all MES policies. So we start with the law, then go through regulation, and then board resolutions and how we're managed, but then a whole group of policies. Policies that are approved by the board then become how management lives day to day with operating the organization. So had 2 co-chairs, had a lot of volunteers and a good group of folks that came together, and from October 30th until April, I just received feedback on how things were going, but I dived into leadership of the project in April as we finished session, and then had the new law that we believed would be signed to try to bring it home, to bring the whole policy project home. So we have, on the management side, completed review and upgrading. Some policies were dropped in the overarching project. They were conjoined. Some policies were combined where they made sense. And I believe we have a draft book for you all, which will obviously not just be in the HR committee, that is ready for us to have our new gold book of how we're going to be operating from a policy perspective once we get through all of the approval from the board. So I've completed my review. I've reviewed every policy. It's a blur over many months for a good old engineer, but I've read every policy, and they're now in some form of review by the Attorney General's office. Next slide. So as this slide, I have to minimize your faces for a second. As this slide shows, we have these groups, and we've come up with a new numbering procedure as well, but we have the MES groups, admin, communications, environmental compliance, etc. Those are the totals, and totals of pre-existing policies. New policies, and this is, by the way, some of the chiefs are in our back office. Chiefs are our directors, but so some of our chiefs, for instance, environmental compliance and safety, Ms. Lanigan led the charge on what made sense from an organizational standpoint for her two major responsibility areas, safety and environmental compliance. So they were 16 environmental compliance pre-existing policies were brought to 7, were reduced to 7 to have more clarity and more streamlined. So we ended up settling on 122 policies right now. There are a few other differences between policies that the Department of Budget Management has that are not considered critical at this point in time, but that we are going to continue to work on seeing how they will be incorporated at MES. Next slide. So this is a list of the new policies that are still in review. Some of them are a little bit more internally focused, like office decorations policies, and others are really statewide policies already, for instance, like the whistleblower policy. But we've gone through them all. Next slide. So, we have finished these policies that are in the Reform Act, but I have to say we have just finished them, and we did hand them to the Attorney General's office at the end of last week, and even for some clarity, with some being missed via email yesterday. So I want to not act as though a proper amount of time was given to Mr. Coleman's office to finish review of the tweaks and changes to some of the policies. And many of these policies were already in board resolution. It's just that even though board resolutions are a higher level, it was deemed necessary by statute to form these as a policy. So, but all of these are completed on our end, on the management side of the shop, and happy to be done, but know that they will need to be improved upon. And we look forward to both Mr. Coleman's feedback and then ultimately the members of the board's feedback on these particular policies, but then also on all of the organization's policies. Next slide. So I'm a little bit ahead of myself. They are all in legal review now, and we feel like we're in a good position for the December 1st deadline. You'll all get hopefully the better part of 3 months as we break down how the board would like to go about the review process. And that's it for my portion, I believe.
Thank you, Dr. Glass. I do have a couple of questions. Actually, the deadline, the period of time we have is really, if you count from September 1, we really have, that's right, it is 3 months. But I wanted to, yeah, I'm sorry. I wanted to just clarify something so we don't lose all of our HR committee members. At this point, the MES reform bill does not require that the whole board or the HR committee review all of the HR policies. You mentioned that you have 122 policies. Is that your understanding?
No, well, most definitely, the 122 is a lot more than the HR policies. And yes, and it is not the requirement that the board readopt every single, well, there's two parts to this. I believe that the board needs to, when we have made changes, management side, the board needs in some way to approve it. It is not just the HR committee. It is also the audit committee and the board at large. So in order for it to get board approval, a voting member of the board should have reviewed them and at least state to the board that they have reviewed these 10 for safety and compliance, and they give their recommendation that the board adopt them, make a motion. I don't think it should come from just the management side with no eyes from a board member, even if they are just being readopted. But we can go back, and if we've made no substantive change, we've just changed the format. We did change the format on every policy, but where we made no substantive change and it had been approved by another board member, I can discuss with Judge Schmolken whether, and Mr. Coleman, that's not worth someone's time when we haven't changed anything and a prior board approved it, other than we changed formatting. But none of it all, but all of it does not fall on the HR committee, just to be clear. It's not in the purview.
Madam Chair, could I put something in here for just a moment?
Yes, Judge Smolkin.
All right, thank you. It strikes me that what we're looking at is sort of two different worlds. And I think maybe it's just an idea that popped into my head, which usually goes out very quickly. But I thought this might be an idea we might talk about. For example, I was thinking of calling it the December package. And the December package is what we have to do as a board to do what the statutes say we have to do. So I think it might be easier on everybody to say, let's look at the call it whatever you want to call it. But I just sort of right out of the air pulled out the December package, anything else that goes with it. And that's where we have to actually drill, I think. That's just an idea. If everybody thinks it's ridiculous, that's fine. It doesn't bother me, but I think it might help. I thought, Dr. Glass, if you would, does that sound like something?
That sounds perfectly appropriate to separate out the December package from the Charles Glass want to read through everything side, and then didn't really make any substantive change, but wants a new day for MES. So I think the December package and what's required by statute is definitely a good separation, and that ends up being 7-8 policies, maybe 4 are in HR, but 4 are in the audit committee, and it's reasonable for the board to then do a deeper dive on those policies to make sure that everything is appropriate.
Well, this is not a motion, it's just an idea. So
yeah, it's an idea.
Think about it. I don't think we
Yep.
need to have a motion on it, but I think we can see. Go ahead.
I agree, Judge Smolkin. We need to, as a priority, address the 8 MES reform policies that are required by December 1st. I agree.
And in order to make sure that we've got, two different sides, that's the reason I put it out there saying, hey, let's have this. This is what we have to do by December, which is the major thing here that we have to do. So if whatever anybody wants to call it, do you want to make it your baby there, Dr. Glass? Or?
I don't have a name right now, but I got the image.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And although Dr. Glass touched on it, Sean will also be giving us a legal review as to the review process in the Attorney General's office. Thank you.
Sure. So as Dr. Glass indicated, the policies have been forwarded to the Office of Attorney General for review. What I believe, what the board wants is for our office to make the December package the priority, which we will do. I don't believe that all of these policies necessarily are HR policies or that would need to be sent back to the HR committee for approval. But what I'm envisioning is that either I or another member of my staff will review these. If we have comments, then we would go back to MES management to work through those comments, possibly revise the draft policies. And then from that, a final draft policy would be provided if it relates to HR matters to the HR committee, and if it relates to other matters, either to the audit committee or to the full board. So that's the process that I see playing out. My goal would be to have all of these policies reviewed, the December package reviewed, and comments provided back to management by certainly by the next HR committee meeting, which I believe the intention is to have a meeting in September. But that's our goal. We will get our reviews and our comments back to management by early September, so that we can work through any changes that need to be made. What we've not mentioned in all of this that will be presented, at least to the full board, and I leave it up to the members of this committee whether they want to review it too, is the requirement in the act that the board also approve a conflicts of interest policy. And that particular policy actually needs to be approved by the board by October 31st of this year. We are working, my office is working on a draft of a conflicts of interest policy. And our goal is also to get that to management and to the board members in September. And I just want to point out, although the statute requires the board to adopt a conflicts of interest policy, in fact, the board members are already subject to the provisions of the Maryland state ethics law. So there are conflicts of interest provisions that do apply to both the board members and to MES employees now. So we'll be looking at the extent to which a policy would need to go beyond what's already covered by statute. And then certainly it's ultimately the board's decision the extent to which they want to address any issues that go beyond the existing statutory requirements. I'm sorry, Ms. Wong, I know you're talking and I can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I was just thanking you. I assume you were finished.
I'm done talking.
Okay. At this point, it would be helpful to ask Judge Smolkin and Dr. Glass to make a decision or a recommendation as to which policies you want the HR committee to review by December 1. I heard earlier someone suggested 4 go to HR, 4 go to the audit committee, but I guess I would be looking to both of you to make a recommendation and perhaps work with Shelley in that regard.
Dr. Glass,
We'll do so. We'll do so. We'll get it done in the next week.
Okay.
all right, when you get something packaged, just send it to me and I'll talk to you about it, okay?
Yep.
Is that all right?
Yeah, most definitely. I'll get that done early next week.
Great. Thank you.
Do any of the committee members have any other questions? I'm sorry, people seem to have trouble hearing me. I don't know whether it's my timbre in the voice. Do any of the other committee members have any other questions at this time?
No.
If not, I think it would be appropriate for us to go into our closed session. And in accordance with General Provisions Section 3-305B1, at this time, the committee will enter a closed session to discuss compensation issues related to specific employees of the agency. And if I may, are there any objections from anyone with regard to going into a closed session? Hearing none, can I have a motion from the committee to enter a closed session for the reasons so stated?
So moved. Bobby Neal.
Second.
Second, thank you, Judge Smolkin. And with that, we'll enter into a closed session. Pam, do we
Okay.
need to hold on like we did last time?
Yes, just hold.